Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. We're just going to wait here for a few more moments for others to join us. We'll get started off. And good afternoon and good evening, everyone, for those joining us from different time zones, if you are. I'm very pleased to have you with us today, and we're just waiting, as I mentioned, for some others to join us. I see the numbers are increasing here. Just give it a couple more moments. I see some more people. The numbers are slowing down that are joining, so looks like we're getting everybody here with us. All right, I think we can get started. So, as I mentioned, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all. We really appreciate you joining us today. So just imagine you're called in for a meeting with your CEO, executive director, or legislature, and they tell you they want you to expand into iGaming or sports betting by the end of the fiscal quarter. Where do you start? That's the question we're here to help you with today through this informative webinar. First and foremost, welcome. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you and your families are, of course, safe, healthy, and strong. My name is Salim Adatia. I'm coming to you from Vancouver, Canada today. I'm Vice President of iGaming. And we in the gaming industry have been steering through uncharted waters. There's no doubt about that. And we've all experienced a fundamental shift in how and when and where we can do business and transact with the consumer. However, as I always say, with unprecedented change comes great opportunity. And that's where GLI was going to help you navigate. New online gaming markets are emerging all over the world, and it's pretty exciting. And we're proud to be working side by side with you regulators and operators and software suppliers all over the world. And some of you may already be involved in interactive gaming, perhaps online or through mobile, and others through casino, slots, sportsbook, or live dealer even. But some of you may be tuning in today because you really need to know where you want to start, and that's where we're going to help you. In either case, today is about you. It's about where you as regulators can get started and how you as software suppliers and operators can expand into new markets. So let's go over a sample of the topics we're going to go over today. How can you navigate this myriad of regulations and technical standards efficiently? What tools do we have? What does GLI offer that can make your life easier? For example, the proprietary software we call Evolution that helps you with product and jurisdictional gap analyses to help expedite your certifications. What workshops and training can we provide you so you're best equipped for the road ahead? And how can you best use our commercial and compliance experts to be first to market? I'm very pleased to have with me today Chris Davies, our Vice President of Sales for Europe. And Chris jointly manages an international team focused on all areas of gaming and cybersecurity. And his team are located in the UK, Netherlands, Italy, and Spain, Austria, and Malta. So his understanding of the many European iGaming and sports betting jurisdictions is going to be really valuable today, especially because his daily routine consists of helping you regulators, suppliers, and operators grow your success on a daily basis. And Pete Wolff is our Director of Technical Compliance. And Pete brings with him over 12 years of experience in this gaming space. And because he started as a test engineer, he's been on the forefront. He's been on the front line. So he knows firsthand what you suppliers and operators go through with certifications. So now he leads a team of 35 plus compliance engineers all over the world, and all of which are responsible for knowing the rules and regulations, get this, for over 480 markets that GLI certifies land-based iGaming, sports betting, and cybersecurity for. So he knows what the regulators go through, what you go through, and we're lucky to have him in his insight today, because he's our turning point, and really it's going to be your turning point and his team as you look to expand. He's an industry expert on new technologies in all areas, such as iGaming, esports, sports betting, you name it. So with that, I thought let's kick it off with our first slide and really get into, what are some important things that the suppliers and regulators that have joined us today, what should they come to the table with when they're seeking for a path for success from us? And Chris, maybe you could kickstart us off.
Yeah, sure. Many thanks, Salim. It's always good to be with yourself and Pete, and a real pleasure to be speaking to everybody today. What markets are open? What markets are emerging? How can I open my market if I'm a regulator? What services can we offer? How can we grow? If we were at a trade show or a networking event, and I'm sure we all look forward to better times when these are happening again. These are the questions that, myself, the sales team, Pete, the compliance team, would be discussing with you. And it's, hopefully we'll cover these today, and always, reach out to us for anything further from the webinar today. I mean, I think it's a real key point, for you that the iGaming market has been a major growth market over the past few years, and continues to grow even in these very, very difficult times. And for people looking, if you're looking for new revenue streams and new markets, the fact that we're dealing with software, it can be implemented globally, and can be deployed rapidly. So that means to you, time to market and revenue is within a short-term grasp. So, today we'll look at how we can assist both, new customers who are looking to start the journey in compliance or to start the journey with GLI, and existing customers, continuing the path to success that they've already enjoyed. And I think the audience that we have today represents the broad spectrum of our iGaming customers, regulators, suppliers, operators, consultants, and a real mix of large corporates, mid-tier companies, and startup organizations. And the key message is that GLI is all about the customer. We're here to assist you in terms of what you have and where to take these things. So just in terms of what, the term iGaming is really wide-reaching. We've got some topics on there from live dealer to slots, blackjack games. So it's really important for us to understand your portfolio, and we can start to plan. And it's we start to plan with the guidance of Pete, his global compliance team, to get a roadmap of markets that are readily available for your services now and your services that you aspire to in the future. I think it's
yeah, I like that, Chris, because I think that's the important takeaway here is if we can find out, for example, what their consumer base is and what they're most interested in terms of their product line delivery, then we can help them expedite where we're going to take them based on their wish list of jurisdictions. That's really good.
Absolutely, Salim. In terms of where, it's first of all, the fact that GLI has a complete knowledge of the global compliance market is great for us to share with you. And if you're looking to enter a new market for yourself, or indeed a newly regulated jurisdiction, it's a real exciting proposition again to increase revenue streams, and also to look at new partnership opportunities between suppliers and operators in these markets. So obviously today, we're not going to go through which market's open, and but obviously do reach out for any information you need from all of us at any time.
Yep.
You know,
And I know
Salim,
this point about the gold time frame, you know, especially with the sports betting in the Americas, when they've mentioned, you know, we want to be live before, you know, sports, the Super Bowl or one of the other, you know, NBA championships. So,
and that's a really key point, Salim. And you know, a lot of new customers, you know, particularly say, how long does the testing phase take? And it's important that you know, we look at it from GLI the other way around. What are your deadlines, and you know, how are we going to meet them? Because as you say, lots of launches are based on sporting events. So it's working back from there and working with the clients to make sure that we hit every single deadline, because you know, we know with suppliers and with operators the amount of marketing budget they put into these launches, and they can't be lost.
right. No, I agree. And that's a good segue into, you know, what we want to do, you know, what we look at, for example, with new clients that are joining us. We'd be looking to understand, you know, what these folks are looking to understand. Help me understand, what would that be? Take us through that, if you would. Actually, we just had a question come in. As I look to expand into new markets, which GLI team would I be working with? And maybe you can help us walk through that.
Yeah, sure, Salim. And you know, in fact, with any customer, be it a new customer. So let's take it back a stage. You know, what we do is very complex. It's at the end of the development cycle, and really the last stage before, you know, going to market and generating revenue for you. So what we try and do is remove any obstacles that can be there. As I said, it's complex, it's very technical. So, you know, we look at time zones and language skills. So, you know, we're fortunate that we have people all around the globe, and it's really important to engage people, you know, straight away with people from, you know, a local time zone and you know, a local language, and that, you know, that cuts a lot of the barriers away. And you know, from there, obviously, we're moving forward. We are, you know, as we develop the relationship, and relationships are based on trust and the local partnerships. It's important that we keep them. And you know, again, we're fortunate in the world of software that you know, we can test for, you know, different jurisdictions still with that customer's local team. So the answer is no. You know, you unless there's a specific jurisdictional regulation that, you know, Pete and his team will share with us, then, you know, you deal with your local team. You know, you've got your ways of working, your continuity, and Pete will explain more later on about how, you know, how we look at the regulations and how we test for them. But they can most definitely be done with the local teams.
Yeah, if I can chime in there too, Salim, and Chris,
Sure.
I think you covered it well. But really, you know, I know firsthand, and like you said, and I think you gave it a little bit too much leeway there. Be ready by Super Bowl. I mean, typically what we hear is, and I feel for the regulators that are on this call, legislation gets passed, and you have to be up and running by next Tuesday. You know, so it's pretty quick, everything that moves along. And because of that, and Chris had kind of mentioned, we're at the end frame as far as testing, and that is the case for certification. That's absolutely the case. But really, you know, the regulators, operators, suppliers on the call today, we completely realize that, you know, you may need to know what you don't know. You may need to know the rules of a certain jurisdiction if you're a supplier looking to get into that market before you even design your product, you know, to make sure it's compliant up front. And similarly, you know, you may need to know what technical requirements, what regulations you need to have in place to do your job as a regulator and to be able to, you know, confirm that what does get eventually down the line approved or certified is compliant and it meets all your regulatory objectives. So I think, and we'll cover it a bit more, I think the earlier on the process you get involved, the better. And that's been my experience dealing with both from the regulatory side as well as the suppliers when passing along information.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a I'd just like to reiterate, if you can have us involved in the early part of your critical path planning and, actually as a milestone in your Gantt chart, in your project plan, those types of things, invite us in early. Let us be part of your process. We want to be a joint strategic partner so that we can then help you, identify that path of least resistance. So the earlier, the better, we always say. And understanding that portfolio, and then we can then walk you through, what are the pitfalls, what are the potential opportunities, all of those types of things. The earlier we can be involved, the better. I just wanted to mention that, we have the question and answer. I see some of you are using that, and I thank you for that. There's a question and answer feature on the bottom of your Zoom screen there. If you can please continue to contribute your questions, we'll try and get through as many of those as possible, and we'll do that. Just moving on to the next slide, I just want to say, Chris, about the customers who are already privileged to be working with, what would we be asking them in order to help them grow? What would we do with that information?
It's all about, really partnership, Salim. We look at the output of what we do is, the certification, the piece of paper. But, to me, for everybody out there, it's all about the collaboration of services, how we work together. And I think a real key message is, how we jointly grow together. It's not, it's not about us, the regulators, the suppliers, the operators. It's about everyone working together to make sure that obviously, the gaming is secure, it meets the regulations, and it's good for the market.
Totally. And I know that we get together with them periodically and understand, what are their aspirations, because those change obviously as new regulations come out, new markets open. So we have to, the more we can stay in touch with you, as a software supplier or a regulator or an operator, we can understand what your varying levels of requirements are in terms of your aspirations. And then we can work with you, because those are going to shift over time. So yeah, that's very important to understand those product and jurisdictional roadmaps.
It really is, Salim, and it might sound like a cliche, but our goal is to be, your trusted advisor. And what we do is, as I said before, very complex. Every market, every jurisdiction is slightly different. There are different costs of entry from the compliance and certification side, and it's about working with our customers on how we can take them through these roadmaps. There may be markets that accept reports from other markets. So it's, and that's why we call things a roadmap, because we're trying to help people navigate, the path to success. And, it's, taking them on that journey that we're seeing more and more on ISS services, in different markets. So, there are various levels of the, the cost of entry. Some jurisdictions now are looking for suppliers and operators to have full ISO 27001 certification, change management. There's ISMS audits, penetration testing, vulnerability assessment. So, all of these need to be considered, on top of the actual games, functional testing that we perform for customers.
Right. And you mentioned something there I wanted to hone in on when you mentioned leveraging previous certifications. So if they can provide us, with an understanding of where their product has been previously evaluated, as well as, the jurisdictions that they want to go to, if you can provide that to us, we can then identify, what are the differences in terms of the product testing that are going to be needed. And of course, what are the differences in terms of the jurisdictional requirements? And in many cases, we're only focusing on those incremental differences. So we're not having to retest the whole product. And that's where there's time and cost savings for you. So please bring that information to us as you engage us for discussion. In terms of cybersecurity, I think, this is an area that's growing and a growing concern, of course, especially with the landscape we're in at the moment. It's the same sort of thing, isn't it? I have a question here about cybersecurity, and I thought it would be good to touch on this. We can also provide an analysis of their cybersecurity posture, couldn't we, Chris?
Yeah, we look at all customers, and similarly to the way we can transfer other elements of the testing you just mentioned there. It's something we can look to align for customers that their ISMS services. So if you out there who are having to go through audits, it can be quite intrusive, both in terms of time and and resource. Your key people within your organizations, and the auditors need time with yourselves to go through the processes and procedures that you have in place for the subsets or the complete part of ISO 27001. And that's something, again, we like to work with you on, so we can align things. So you can potentially have a multi-audit that could cover, for example, the UK, Denmark, Sweden. So yeah, everything we do for you is trying to be transparent. It's trying to make things, the least path of resistance. We know how, as I said, every market has its own nuances, its own differences. So it's about really what we can take as the core from each of these markets for you, and only really try and test once.
Yeah, and I know that's especially important to you. The feedback we've received from you is that you want less friction. So rather than having our cybersecurity experts come and do an audit 3-4 times a year, why not understand all the markets you're going to deploy to? Evaluate your cybersecurity from a physical, administrative, and technical perspective, once. And then, as Chris mentioned, apply that to many. So that's something that's very important. And we also obviously want to do the same thing with games, random number generators, an RGS, or a platform. Test once, apply to many jurisdictions as possible at the same time. Just want to move on into, Pete, I know the majority of the time, you're busy, your team is busy communicating with regulators, but now more than ever, especially with iGaming markets and sports betting markets opening in North America, you're being depended on by suppliers. So if you could chime in on here, what examples have you and your team have where you're helping suppliers both in terms of new and existing markets?
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, I mean, North America is coming on board now. Europe's been around for quite some time. So collectively, in the intro, you mentioned 35 plus compliance engineers across the globe. We have a very unique and good insight on other markets and what the requirements are for each markets. So from a supplier perspective, what's really, I think, been most beneficial, especially the new clients that me or somebody with my team might be on phone calls with, is really explaining to them, and even some of the people probably on the call, explaining that how we have a collection of rules and requirements from across the globe. Salim had mentioned briefly Evolution. So it's a proprietary testing system that we have where we have the 480 plus markets across the globe. We have all the rules, we have all the regulations, we have licensing requirements, we have these other things that might really kind of fall outside what you might expect from a test lab, but we have that knowledge base, and we can definitely share that, with the different suppliers that we deal with. And what's been most beneficial for the suppliers I've spoken with specifically is to help them with that regulatory roadmap, to explain to them, what markets might share requirements where it would be an easier lift to go there first, and what the additional requirements would be that they'd have to meet or design their product to get into afterwards.
So if I can just interject for a moment here, because I'm
Sure.
seeing a question, Pete. I just wanted to ask it before we move off this slide. I'm a supplier currently in multiple markets in Europe, but looking to get into markets in the US, Latin America, and Canada. how do I know which markets share similar requirements with others?
It's a great question. So we actually get that question quite a bit. So I'm glad whoever wrote it actually asked it today. We have the ability as the compliance group, we put together what we call jurisdictional gap analysis documents. This essentially is a left to right comparison, a breakdown comparison of what requirements, what rules are shared from one market to the next, which ones might be unique. But on top of that, we also have our analysis built in and explain how some markets might allow for operational controls to meet certain requirements, and maybe it doesn't have to be necessarily a technical solution by itself. So we definitely, upon request, and I'm sure afterwards, our contact information will go up on the last screen we show later today. Please feel free to reach out, and we can help you in that regard for sure.
Awesome. And maybe you can walk us through a little bit about the testing repository that we have. How can we leverage that? Because sometimes, people would, I know that you as regulators or software suppliers or operators, would like us to perform a certain amount of testing, but not necessarily engage a final report or some sort of a deliverable necessarily right at that time that the testing is complete.
Yep. That's another great question. So right now, we are dealing with a handful of markets that are coming on board with draft regulations, in the U.S. And we have the ability to test against those draft requirements. It's all, again, within the GLI evolution program. So we're able to, save those results. And when the rules do eventually become finalized, we can take a look at the gap of what's changed, what's different. Similarly, and Salim, you hit on it, sometimes we'll get submissions in what we might call pre-certification testing. So we may, the supplier might have a math model for the game that they want to, confirm if the specific odds of the game meet a jurisdiction's requirements. Or they might just have help screens together. They don't necessarily have the game design itself. Our testing teams around the globe, because of evolution, it's a standardized way to test. We can send that to whatever works best for you to have that product evaluated for. Test specifically the pieces that are ready to go at this point, and then leverage those results as more comes in, or as, like I said, as regulations become finalized. And again, not have to fully retest. We're able to piecemeal it compared to do a full set of retesting again.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because we just had another question. Do I need to re-perform full tests for each new market as I expand into them?
No. So the answer is definitely no. And again, you hit on it earlier. We would, the way our evolution system is built, we took the spider web of rules and regulations from across the globe and kind of, linked up similar requirements and made more sense of it. So any market that you're currently in, if you're looking to get into another market, if that requirement was already evaluated for the market you're currently in, we would not have to go back and reevaluate it. We would only test the differences for the next market you're interested to go to.
Excellent. They said, thank you, Pete.
Sure.
Okay, so in terms of regular meetings with the regulators, walk us through that a little bit, Pete, because I know your team is busy and you're very helpful for Chris and I, giving us updates. Walk us through that a bit.
Yeah, so really, and it seems maybe the North American market, not necessarily just the US market, but the North American market, regulators are very, very focused on, understanding the new products coming in. And it's probably because they haven't seen these types of products. And it's something new to them and their teams. So we do have regular meetings. We have either weekly meetings from somebody from my team with the different state and tribal jurisdictions in North America or in the US. And when new products come in to be evaluated, we have conversations with those regulators to kind of help explain the product in a way that breaks it down into more layman's terms. And also, gives them some assurance that there's things to cover, the coverage as far as the compliance goes. So really these meetings help twofold. If there's, if there's issues that come up at a later time, we can get on the phone real quick, kind of hash it out, explain what happened. or if there's new products looking to go into those markets, we have the staff and the ability to get on the line, explain that, and basically help you guys get to market quicker than, as quick as possible.
So it's really important, you as regulators, please involve us as early as day one, even when you're just considering, we've been brought into exploratory meetings, and that's just fine with us, because if we can give you sort of the best practices that are happening in other jurisdictions, we can help, you alleviate some of the same pitfalls that other jurisdictions had to go through. There's no reason why any of those challenges need to be repeated. I just want to go over a little bit about JIRA here, if I could. I know that we've, utilized JIRA in our sense for identifying issues of non-compliance. Can you walk us through that a little bit, Chris or Pete, and how that benefits regulators and suppliers?
If I can start, Chris, and then feel free to chime in afterwards. So, it was a decision made a few years back by GLI to really utilize the JIRA issue tracking system across the board for any of the suppliers that we deal with. Essentially, we're able to flag issues as they occur. Our engineering teams are able to flag issues as they occur. If those issues may be questionable, or the engineering team just isn't sure what the regulators' decision process might be on it, those can get pushed to our compliance team globally, where we can chime in on those JIRA tickets as well. But a huge benefit as well is it's real-time issue reporting to the suppliers. So for everybody on the phone today, if you have a submission in-house at GLI, you don't have to wait 3 weeks down the road to get an issue list. If you link up with our JIRA system, which many suppliers have to date, you can get those in real time as they're flagged. And that's been hugely beneficial for the suppliers who have done that, because they have the ability then to pass that on to their development team and actually fix the issues while our testing cycle still might be going on. So, it's almost like a parallel effort at that point compared to, waiting till the end of the testing process to get an issue list.
Yep, and I just have a comment here rather than a question. It says, I really appreciate being drip fed issues of non-compliance through JIRA. It allows me to respond in real time. So that's really good, because I see that means that people are actually seeing value in that. And that is a back and forth conversation, isn't it? That track, that actually keeps a demonstrable sort of database of the requirements that and the conversation on the issue of non-compliance until it's closed. So that's, I think, very valuable. Question here in terms of from the regulator perspective. I think we all have some good insight on what the suppliers have for us, how we can help them. But if you can help me go into a bit more details for regulators, and how can they navigate their way forward, Pete?
Yeah, and again, as you mentioned, near and dear to my heart, compliance, we traditionally, we're the ones who deal with the regulators at GLI. And there have been many examples in just the last couple of years, especially with PASPA being repealed, and recently with some markets coming on board with internet gaming, where we may get a call and say, look, we know how to regulate slot machines. We know how to regulate VGT style machines. Sports wagering and iGaming is unique. It's different. So for you regulators on the call today, or operators, don't feel like you're on an island. This is a common thing that I've actually been part of conversations with different regulatory bodies, kind of getting up and running. So where we've been able to kind of help play a role, and I think to help along with industry is being able to share our knowledge and share a very unique insight. We have a collection of, again, 480 rules and regulations across the globe. We're able to share, what's worked, what hasn't worked. So take advantage of it. If legislation gets passed and you're in a bind and you need help, reach out. We would love to talk to you guys about, what we think good things to have in place would be, what you're going to need to do as far as your regulatory structure goes. And just share the knowledge that we have from different markets. And again, the sooner, the better. And that's been my experience. The the jurisdictions that have gotten on this sooner, even before legislation gets passed, either for training or for just reaching out to pick our brain, they put themselves in a lot better position once it's time to go live date.
Yeah, absolutely. Involve us. If you have a new concept being brought forward to you, usually we've been in contact with those suppliers already in some place around the world. So there's no reason you can't just sort of say, hey, GLI, I've got this concept that this supplier has brought to me. What are your thoughts on this? You know, as a regulator, feel free to do that. We handle those questions like every day. So that's no problem. And, you know, there's something here I wanted to ask you. We just got a question, Chris. I'm hearing legislation is likely to pass very soon in my jurisdiction for sports betting, for sure, and internet gaming potentially. But I don't know the first place to start and get me and my team up to speed. Any insights?
Yeah, sure, Salim. You know, that's a really good question. You know, when people are, again, it's looking at new markets. So, you know, something that you know is really useful for everybody out there, and Pete, you know, highlighted before is the ability to test draft regulations. So if there's a market that's published draft regulations, you know, we can, for you, test to those. And as Pete said, if there are any gaps, when everything's finalized, you know, that's a very short piece of work. And so it enables, again, you know, we're talking about time to market, deployment of software. If we've already done the bulk of this work, it's, you know, it's just really, it's the fine tuning and producing the report or the certification that then, you know, takes you forward for revenue.
Awesome. And Pete, I know you get this question almost on a daily basis now in North America. Can you give us some insight into that question?
Yeah, again, I think the more proactive you are, you know, I'm speaking to the regulators and maybe some of the operators in this call, the more proactive you are doing the due diligence up front, whether that's reaching out to us for you know, support, whether that's doing your own homework and taking a look at rules and regulations from other markets to try to kind of put that together. The more active you are up front, I think the better position you're in. And take advantage of opportunities where, you know, consultative type services or training opportunities. You know, I know today we're talking, you know, sports wagering, iGaming, obviously, you know, the big item right now, but there's other items going on now too, cashless gaming, you know, and other forms of new technologies, you know, new advancements to almost kind of meet needs of this COVID world we're living in today. So really, the thought is anytime anything new comes your way, if you're not sure, reach out or do the you know, the research yourself or the homework yourself, because you'll be in that much better of a spot.
Yeah, no, I agree. And this leads nicely into the next topic I wanted to go over, and that was technical standards and change management, because I know we've even provided some workshops on change management, you know, because people have been in such a hurry to get up and live and running with sports betting and iGaming. And then it's sort of like, oh, well, we understand that this is not, you know, this software and this code is not stagnant. It needs to change. It needs to be evolved. It needs to be enhanced, especially from a security perspective. So what standards or guides do we have on the ready? What resources can, you know, the regulators and suppliers joining us today, what can they turn to in their time of need?
Great question. So, and you have it on the screen right now. So we have, you know, two of the GLI standards as well as our change management guide. GLI 19 was written, and it's actually you know, just been published as of recent, the final version 3.0. So we are, you know, that covers our internet gaming type submission. So that covers, you know, mobile wagering, that covers internet gaming, and what the regulators, you know, that have those type of offerings have done is look to reference or use that standard to essentially fill the technical regulatory requirements. You're talking about, you know, key reporting requirements. You're talking about, you know your customer, KYC controls. You're talking about geolocation requirements. You're talking about, you know, different requirements that you have to meet to essentially be seen as compliant for a given market. GLI 33 is our sports wagering standard. That was created to cover not just for retail sports betting, but also for your mobile sports betting. Essentially, when PASPA was repealed, we kind of put that together pretty quickly per a direct need from industry, from both the regulatory side. What do we need to have in place, our technical requirements to meet, our regulatory obligations, as well as from a supplier side, where the push was to have more of a standardized versions of requirements from one market to the next. So one product line could be used in one market to the next, and it wouldn't necessarily, have to be rebuilt from scratch every time you wanted to go to a new market. GLI 33 by far has been hugely successful, especially in the North American market. I think the vast majority of markets have pointed to it to cover their technical requirements as far as sports wagering goes. Also, there's appendices in the back of the standards as well for both of those that cover both operational audits as well as security audits. So we briefly touched a little bit earlier on the security requirements and security audits or ISS audits. Both of those have a collection of that information in the back. So I heavily suggest, again, for regulators, operators, suppliers on the call, after this, or even while you're watching, go to gaminglabs.com. You can find copies of this. And I think this will give you kind of a good roadmap of what makes sense to have in place as far as the cover technical perspective.
And I just want to add, Pete, if I could, you as a regulator or a tribe, tribal regulator, there's no reason why you couldn't utilize any one of these standards in whole or in part. So these are the jurisdiction standards. We don't see these as GLI standards that they're really for the industry. So feel free to adopt them as they are published. Tear off the front page and put on your logo and yours if you would like, or just leverage sections from the standard. Anything goes here, because really this is just a game for you to help you identify how do you get started quickly and efficiently. Because if you can utilize that as your own standard and requirements, it helps you get to market quicker, but it also helps the suppliers, because then they're able to bring in their product and not necessarily have testing have to be reperformed to a reinvented wheel, so to speak. So just wanted to add that.
Yeah, that's a great point, Salim. These standards are a collection of requirements from across the globe, which are industry proven, and really before they get published and finalized, they get blessings from the different regulator suppliers we work with. So it's definitely a collective document, and we're not too proud. Feel free to copy paste. If it works for you, that's what it's there for. It's there to help you guys out.
That's a form of flattery for us.
There you go. As far as change management goes, and we probably could take a whole hour to talk about change management. Like you mentioned, we have done training sessions on this just by itself. Really, anything mobile you deal with today, whether it's mobile gaming, whether it's your Netflix app, whether it's you're ordering something off Amazon off your phone, anything in the mobile space, there's a need and there's a drive to be able to update that more frequently than maybe you would have in the casino world. The casino world, you have software, they get certified, it goes inside the machine, the logic door gets closed, and the signature doesn't change. That's not going to be the case for internet gaming or sports wagering. It's very, very likely and very possible a few days after go live, when the signatures first get validated, that they'll be different. There'll be changes that are made. More likely than not, those changes will not impact anything regulatory in nature. It's just a matter of if preference, if the screen color changes, or if the layout of a specific menu or report changes, or whatever it might be. When that gets kind of recompiled and recreated as a program, signatures change. So really, the direction that we receive from industry is to take a look to see if maybe we as GLI could put together a set requirements that might be used for change management. And change management at a really high level is allowing operators, allowing suppliers to make changes, push those changes live onto the system, and in parallel or at a later time have that evaluated. And really the key is to require the operator to make a log of all those changes, which those changes will then maybe be audited, a few times a year. And if the changes made are, significant enough that you feel a lab has to get back and reevaluate that, then you as a regulator has the ability to do so. So again, gaminglabs.com, under the standard section, you can definitely find a copy of this as well. And I think it's something, at least in my opinion, because I was a test engineer for gaming devices, for a long time. This is the biggest thing, I think, for you to get your minds around as regulators and operators. And once you do so, I think you'll be in a lot better spot as far as internet gaming and sports wagering go.
Thanks, Pete. Gentlemen, thankfully, after having worked with all emerging jurisdictions to date, we've collected a lot of feedback from the industry. So walk us through what else our audience can leverage based on that feedback.
Sure, Salim, I'll just take a couple that have been,
Sure.
I've had feedback that's been really, really useful. So, we've just been touching on workshops, and training. There's obviously the full GLI university curriculum that people can go through. But, I think what is really of benefit to people is, you come to us and say, I would like a workshop on X. And we can put things together, in order to help you. Only recently, we did a full-blown US market workshop. It was actually run in Europe under Pete's guidance by one of the local compliance team there, and excellent, really great feedback from the customer who was undertaking that. And I think the other thing, that has been really, really good is pre-compliance testing, particularly in the American markets. I remember when the American market was open, and everyone says, "Let's go to America," and then it was the realization that it was going to be everything state by state. So, and that's where the updates we get from Pete on these kind of things are fantastic. But we've done pre-compliance testing for customers for New Jersey, where obviously there's a state lab. And, the benefit for you in doing that is, as Pete touched on, we keep these results and they can be transferred to other states where the requirements are similar. So it's, it takes that lift away from going into another jurisdiction.
And that also helps you as a supplier with a bill of health, if you will, because then you can sort of say, okay, I've had my product run through its pre-compliance. And if you have, for example, 40 games, you may even just want to do one or two of them against a pre-compliance test. So you can extrapolate those changes on those issues that you need to fix on those one or two games to your full library before submitting the full library to us. That's also helpful. Pete, what about on the other side in terms of leveraging tools like evolution and those types of things? We touched on it a bit, but you can just go into it just a bit more for me.
Yeah, and again, I think we covered it earlier, but for sure, evolution, a program we have, proprietary to GLI, collection of 480 plus, requirements from across the globe, really beneficial to both the suppliers today, as well as, operators and regulators, where we have the ability to share information, for emerging markets. We get the question a lot, what do other markets have in place as far as geolocation goes? What do other markets have in place as far as, security requirements and whatnot? And we have that at our fingertips. Similarly, from the supplier space, we're able to leverage test results. So we're able to do pre-certification testing for New Jersey and carry those results into Delaware, into upcoming into Michigan, into West Virginia. We're able to kind of carry that forward. So really, it's a benefit we see as a huge benefit to everybody in industry.
Right. So if you've been tested, for example, to Denmark or Sweden, and now you're looking at transferring into Pennsylvania or Colorado or Indiana or Iowa, there's no reason why you couldn't come to us and say, GLI, one, I would like a jurisdictional gap analysis between the requirements. We will consult with Evolution, the software, and then it actually will spit out the differentials. And two, there's no reason why we couldn't just focus on those incremental differences so that we're, again, leveraging all the previous testing we've done, not having to retest fully, and then just get you to market quicker.
Yep, absolutely.
And in terms of emerging technology education, this is something I know, at last G2E, Chris and I were getting jealous because most people wanted to speak with you and your team rather than us, but in terms of some of these emerging technologies. But, it really is the full gamut, isn't it? It's like, artificial intelligence, esports, like your team is busy giving feedback on all of that, isn't it?
Yeah. And we're doing training sessions. We're doing, from the supplier side where we're doing white papers, to see how that type of technology might fit into jurisdictions. We're getting requests to have those startup conversations with regulators, for these new technology points. We're from the regulatory side, like I said, we're doing training. We're in this COVID world, and it's difficult to travel. It's difficult to get in rooms with large amounts of people. But we found ways to make it work. We found ways to have Zoom type training events or whatever media works for that regulatory body, and kind of spread our knowledge and really help educate.
I just want to squeeze in one last question here. I got what are you even able to provide training given the travel restrictions in my place and my part of the country at the moment?
Absolutely. So we actually have offerings, and I think it can be found on our GLI website, and if not, afterwards give us a call. We can pass it along. But under technical compliance, we have the GLI University program, which can cover anything from your very basics on your slots floor. So if you're an operator today, what I would say is we can help train new staff that may be either coming back from furlough or new staff that are on board. We're able to kind of train from the basics to help get them up to speed. And similarly, we have other programs like for AI, for esports, for sports wagering, for internet gaming. We were able to deliver all those remotely via the GLI University program. We also have our Bulletproof team has some very focused classes on a robust number of things, ranging from trainings for Microsoft utilities to sports wagering, and really that's more of a classroom type environment where there's tests that are taken and questions that are asked. But really we have offerings that we can definitely provide information on and get your team up to speed pretty quick.
Awesome. Well, I just wanted to, we're running short on time here. I know there's always so much to talk about, but that's why, we're here for you. Our contact details are here. We'd love you to engage us. We really want to speak with you. And I want to just conclude by saying that, 30 plus years of experience, tools, and know-how mean nothing unless we can share it with you regulators, with you software suppliers and operators. That's because when you grow, we grow, and so does the industry. So if you ever feel like you're alone in your expansion endeavors, then quite frankly, we just haven't done our job. So don't ever feel alone. I like that comment Chris made about don't ever feel like you're on an island. Right from where you regulators are tasked with setting up rules, you hear from the legislature, your regulations, your standards, all the way to when suppliers and operators, you're seeking to comply with those. That's where we want to help you. So, come to us. That's the entire journey that we want to be beside you for. You need only say the word. In fact, on that note, we wanted to encourage you to take, a couple minutes. Literally, that's all it's going to take to complete our assessment tool. There's a link here on the bottom of this page. And what it'll be is after you've clicked through a few things, we'll get in touch with you directly with a complimentary consultation. So please take advantage of that. With that, I wanted to thank you, Chris and Pete, for sharing your wisdom today. And thank you all for tuning in today. We hope you found it, really, really useful. As the lab that's only worked, with all of you and all the regulated jurisdictions worldwide, we're privileged, we're happy, and we want to promise to give you the best opportunity for success. So, it's never been more important than now. I mean, especially with what we're all going through, stay safe, please. Keep your spirits up. We'll be there with you. Let's help navigate this new future of gaming together. Thanks for attending, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.